Hey everyone, it's Christy, a Semi-Crafty Librarian. Thanks so much for tuning in today. We're going to make something pretty cool. We're going to make little ring bowls, tiny little ring bowls or bowls for coins. And I kept mine really small, but I'll talk to you a little bit about how you can make them larger. So you can see this one, super tiny. This one is more of a medium-sized one, but it's a perfect little bowl to set your rings in or set coins in. I keep one of these on my desk at work and I stick a chapstick in there. Super fun, little handy bowls made out of recycled magazines, newspapers, and even book pages. So let me talk a little bit about the supplies. So there's not a whole lot that you need, which is really cool when you make this project. So you really just need either newspaper. This was an old book that we had that was damaged that we were getting ready to throw away. So I just tore out some pages. You can use book pages and you can also use magazine pages. And as I was making this project, I realized that depending on the magazine you use, the thicker the paper is. So some magazines have really thin pages in them, and some magazines, like this old fashion magazine, the pages are actually a little bit thicker. And so depending on the thickness of the page, it's a little more sturdy when you go to make the strips that you're going to turn into the bowl. So when you use newspaper or newsprint, you kind of just get, obviously, a newsprint kind of black and white with a little bit of color in there look to your bowl. So you can see some of the words, you can see some of the color depending on the newspaper page that you use. On the inside, same thing. When you use the book, you can definitely see the difference, right? You're just getting the background color of the page and the words, which is kind of an interesting look as well. And then with the magazine, you see all the different colors in the bowl, and it makes for a more colorful, visually appealing bowl if you like the colors. And what you can do too, even with the newspaper pages, you can tear out different colors. If you kind of want a more pink themed bowl, just go through your magazine and rip out all of the pages that have pink on them. And same thing if you want it blue, just go through your magazine and you can tear out all of the various blue colored pages, and you can use that to make the strips for your bowl. When I made these, I just used an assortment. So you've got green, yellow, blues, browns, and it just makes for a more rainbow colored effect. Okay, so how do you actually make this bowl? It's really, really simple. However, depending on how big you want your bowl, it can be a little bit time consuming. So let me show you the process, okay? You're gonna take your newspaper, your book page, your magazine page, and what I did, and I experimented a little bit, I just folded it over 3 times. So you have a little bit of a thickness, but it's not too thick. I made the first bowl I folded up the entire page, and it was just really too thick. So I experimented a little bit, and I think 3 folds is about where you want to be, 2 or 3 folds. And this is a little bit thicker paper, so it's going to be a little bit more sturdy. Get your glue stick, and you just run your glue stick right down that last fold. You fold it over, press it down, and you cut it out. Super, super simple, right? And so you can see after I cut this out that the part that's going to show is this side of the page, which is mostly pink, and you end up with a pink strip. Okay, so you just continue to do that. And if you have a little edge there that's not quite folded over, you can just get your glue and just run it across there and stick down that little edge that might not have folded over. You kind of really want a clean edge when you get all of your strips made. You don't want any straggly paper ends. So you just continue the process, right? And this is where it gets a little time consuming. So you might want to do this while you're watching a movie or watching a show, listening to a podcast, whatever the case may be. Makes the time go a little bit faster when you fold these papers up like this, because then after you get as many as you think you're going to need, so I'll show you, I'll cut this one out again. You have to attach all these strips together. So you get that cut out. And when I made this bowl, it took me well over an hour to fold, to cut, attach, and to roll it into this tiny little bowl. So the more strips, the longer it takes. But for a little ring-size bowl, it doesn't take but probably about an hour. So you take all of your strips, okay? Now you can use glue or you could tape. I taped my bowls the first time I made them, but I noticed that when you roll it into the coil, the tape sticks out a little bit. I don't know if you can see, but you end up kind of getting that little tape that pokes out of your bowl. And I just didn't like the way it looked. So I decided that instead of taping, I would glue. Obviously with the glue, it's going to take a little bit longer between the time that you attach your strips to when you can coil them into the bowl. With the tape, you can coil right away, but with the glue, you've got to leave a little bit of time for the glue to dry. And what you end up with is an enormous pile of glued together strips of paper, okay? And if one comes apart, like it looks like this one might be getting ready to come apart, you could just tape it back up. And I also realized like I'd like to trim that little strip right there because I don't want those pokey edges sticking out. So when you've got your amount of strips that you think you want for your bowl, let me find my end here. It's all caught up in this twisty bits. Okay, so you have to start coiling, and you really want a tight coil, which is easy to achieve in the beginning of this process, and it gets a little more difficult to maintain that tight coil the bigger that your disc gets. So if you can see, you just twist it around, you keep going. I'm just going to do a little bit because I want it to get a little big so I can show you what I figured out to keep it as tight as possible. Now, I was rolling and, pulling to keep it tight, and a couple of times I pulled so hard that my strip broke. So I just glued it back together. Now you can see, right, where I glued the two strips, and there's that end point. So you just keep rolling, and you can stick that end if it's sticking out like that, and just keep it in your coil, okay? And by the way, your hands are going to get full of ink from the newsprint or the magazine. So if you don't like that feeling, put on a pair of gloves. I didn't realize by the end of the first bowl I made, my hands were pretty dirty with magazine ink. So you keep going and you keep coiling. Now, I like to just put my finger and my thumb in the middle, and you can keep the tension on it a little bit better like this. Okay? Now, sometimes you might accidentally drop it or it comes uncoiled, and that's all right. You just start over. It's a pretty forgiving project. And I did that once or twice. The bigger your coil gets, it's kind of unruly to hold on to it, and it can slip and you drop it and it comes uncoiled. And depending on how far along you are, sometimes you have to start all the way over, which can be frustrating. But overall, that's a pretty simple project. And you can see right there, whoops, it came apart. Okay, so what I could do, I could either tape it if I want to keep on coiling, or I'll just get my glue again and I'll glue it down. And then of course I need to wait a little bit for it to dry before I continue. But for our purposes, let's see what happens here. I'm going to gently just coil it around. Now, what could potentially happen if you don't wait for the glue to dry, you're going to glue your whole thing together. But I just want to demonstrate how that coil looks. And this is actually black paper from a magazine. So you know, when I go to turn this into the bowl, it's going to mostly be black. Okay, so you keep going, you keep going. This whole mound right here, you can see how big it is. Okay, that's probably going to make you a bowl about this big. All right, so if you want, so you can look at this coil right here. If you want a bowl twice as big as this, your coil is going to have to be about that big. So when you get it coiled, the end piece right there, you glue down, and I just used a rubber band like this to hold the edge down. And then when the edge was dry, you take the rubber band off, and this is where you form the bowl piece of it. Now, this is kind of a little more tricky. Take your time, because what you want to do is make sure as you're pressing your bowl strips out, and I practiced a couple times with this one, and this book paper, it doesn't slide real easy. It's not as slick as the magazine paper, so it gets a little bit stuck. And keep in mind, you want your bowl to sit flat on a table, so you've got to keep this inner part flat to the ground, so you've got a nice bowl that'll sit as flat as possible. And you keep on moving the sides up as tall as you want it. And again, this is, see, it just came uncoiled. So you have to be real careful because it can come uncoiled. So you just go back and you coil it again. But let me keep making this bottom part into the bowl so you kind of get a rough idea of what it's going to look like. Okay, I'm just going to make it kind of tall here like this. So your bowl would sit like this. And then to make it sturdy, what you're going to do, and you can just keep messing with it. My coil came undone, so it's all right. I'll just have to do it over. Let me show you in this little tiny one. It's the same process, right? You just move and see how much easier this magazine paper is to spread out into your bowl. So once you get the bowl shaped the way that you want it, you can make it tall, you can kind of make it flat like that. You take your glue, and I'm just using some tacky glue. You can use a little watered down white glue, school glue if you want. I'm just going to put a little bit in a cup. You don't need a whole lot. Take your paintbrush, oops, and you use your paintbrush and you just smear the glue all the way around. Okay, you get the outside and the inside. Because what's going to happen is your glue is going to obviously glue the whole thing so it sticks together and it'll hold its shape. So what I did with my bigger bowl is I actually just kind of dumped a blob of the glue in the center of the bowl and just spread it out that way. So same thing on the inside. You just get all the little crevices with your glue. So the whole thing is covered. And use your best judgment in terms of how much glue. If you get too thick of a blob of glue, too much of a layer of glue, you can see the glue on your bowl. So you just want a kind of a nice light layer like that, and then leave it to dry for a few hours or overnight, and it'll harden and it will clear. The glue will dry clear, and you have your tiny little ring bowl, or whatever you want to put in it. Put coins, jewelry, whatever. At the end of the day, if you make it big enough, you can put your card keys. Just a nice catch-all. And I just think they're a really cool way to recycle newspapers or newspaper magazines, book pages, whatever you want. So experiment a little bit. It's fun and it's easy. It's a little bit time consuming, but that's okay. We all should take a little bit of time to do some crafts in our life or something creative, right? So let me show you this really cool, just to give you a little preview of a really cool thing that Mrs. Jessica is going to do tomorrow in her makerspace. She's going to make marble paper, and once you make your marble paper, there are some really cool things you can do with it. So tune in tomorrow afternoon for Mrs. Jessica's makerspace and learn how to make this really awesome looking marble paper to turn into whatever you want. And let's not forget about our summer reading program. So sign up for summer reading. We'd love to get you signed up, and we've got tons of really great books for you to potentially win a prize if you read lots of minutes, and there are other cool prizes. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.